If you've ever wondered who else has been a little bit low today, who else is doing their best to hold it together, how do I cope, and how can I make things better? These are the sort of questions that have led to us recording this podcast.
Join us, Stephen and Alan, your everyday average people, as we discuss with guests our unfiltered experiences of mental health, the highs and the lows, the signs and the symptoms, the strategies and the triggers, the impact and the lessons.
Whether you've experienced it yourself, know somebody who has, or just want to listen to the everyday mental health experiences of others, then this podcast is a safe space for you. So listen in and enjoy. Welcome back.
Welcome back. How are you?
Not bad, not bad. Different setting, completely.
Very different, yeah. Val de Lamar.
Yeah, I struggle to say it, but
You do, yeah. That's why I got it in early doors.
yeah, exactly. So those who are listening on Spotify and Apple, go and check it out on YouTube because it's a really, really nice setting. Hopefully it'll get better and better as the episode goes on.
Romantic.
Very.
How have you been?
I've not been too bad. It's definitely been a whirlwind, as we said in our post.
Yeah. Mixture of emotions, I think.
Yeah.
But this was sort of a bit of a out of the blue episode for us, I guess, wasn't it? We anticipated having a little reflection at the start of every recording, but felt that because of the response and how much has gone on the last couple of weeks, that it would warrant an episode in itself, just sort of reflect on where we've been and what we've been up to, and the response we've had.
I think it's probably down to the fact the response we've had's been pretty mega.
Yeah, it's been a huge couple of weeks, hasn't it? From the point where, I'd say the last month or so, from going from a concept to actually properly recording to then getting the episodes out and the response that's had. So we felt obviously that it was worth sitting down and chatting things through. So I think it's worth us maybe having a look at how we each felt in relation to our own episodes coming out.
Yeah.
Maybe have a little chat about the response and momentum that's sort of gathered.
Mm-hmm.
Have a little look at messages we've received, and then maybe a few questions after that have come in, and that can lead into where we're going next, I guess.
Which we're not going to be able to cover all of them, but there has been a lot.
Yeah, there has.
The opening up of the conversation has definitely been happening.
Yeah, and I think on that, keep the questions coming in, because we will try to include questions
Always.
every episode, mainly for those guests that are coming on to speak, and we'll talk about those afterwards. But for us as well, so we can sort of keep touching base on things that people are asking about.
Yeah. The digital producer in me just needs to quickly peel your mic down here. That's cute, isn't it?
Thank you very much.
I know. And then I'll just pull that. There you go.
Thanks, Stephen.
That should be all right.
Thank you very much.
So yeah, where do we start?
Well, let's start on your episode.
Yeah.
Because we sort of caught up a little bit at the start of yours about just where we are with things and what we're planning to do. So I guess I want to know how you felt. So we recorded yours and mine back to back.
Yeah.
Quite a long evening setting up.
Just before the
recording,
Easter weekend as well,
closing
wasn't
down,
it?
yeah. Then you spent a fair bit of time, I think it's fair to say, editing, getting everything ready from a tech perspective, and then getting it out. So how did you feel from the point we stopped recording to the point it came out?
I think I was actually really excited because we had the luxury of sitting and talking about it. I knew that the content was good. I know you were a little bit apprehensive of your episode, but I knew that what we had recorded was really good, really powerful. So I was actually looking forward to spending my Easter weekend editing them, and I did. I spent the majority of the time.
Wasn't it?
Yeah, pretty much. And just seeing all the little clips coming out of it as well was amazing. It was good. So I didn't, after the episode finished, it was just went so fast. And I really was excited for the launch date, which was on the Tuesday after the Easter weekend.
Yeah.
So, which we made, because everybody would have heard it and watched it and all the rest of it, and seen all the little snippets that we've put out as well from it. So yeah, it was exciting.
Did that excitement continue all the way up until the point it came out, or was there a bit of a period between finishing the editing and actually releasing that change at all?
No, I think I was excited all the way through. Up until I just wanted to see how it would be received and how people would react to it. Again, our stories are different, so I've spoken about this a lot
Yeah.
in my life. So I wasn't worried about people hearing it for the first time, because I want them to hear it for the first time, because this is me at the end of the day.
Yeah.
So, oh God, jeez.
That's the point of it, though, isn't it?
I know it
Yeah.
is.
And we'll come on to that when we talk about
So
Margaret, I
yeah,
guess.
all the way up until the episode was released, I was just so excited. I just wanted to see the reaction, and yeah,
What about when it came out?
yeah, wow, wow. So the first day it came out, it got a lot of traction, to say the least. We got invited to an interview with BBC. That was actually, luckily, that was before the episode came out, so we were able to talk about the episode. It was similar to the teaser. It was, we could go through it and point people in the direction of our episode. So it definitely helped a lot. And thank you to BBC and Ashley
absolutely.
for having us on, because that really helped. And
For rinsing me live on air.
yeah, that was such a good moment.
You don't look like an Alan, you look like an egg.
Yeah, that was. We're going to soundbite that. We'll release that separately. So yeah, from there it was just crazy. The numbers were going up and up and up. The messages were coming flying in. We got invited to talk with Channel 103. But just to give you an idea of my night, I mean, I went home. I had work all day Tuesday. I went home and I had all the intentions of editing your podcast. But honestly, the messages were, and I want to give everybody, you know, if they're going to talk to us and open up about these things, I want to give them the time, and that's exactly what I was doing. I was giving everybody I possibly could the time to respond and react to the messages. I had Channel 103 wanting to do an interview in the evening. I was trying to edit the BBC interview and also edit your episode. So from someone with mental health and anxiety problems, it was a lot, and I struggled quite a bit that evening.
Yeah, because it's fair to say, isn't it, that you take on the major share of the work. You know, I've said quite openly that I sort of rock up, chat to you, and then head off, and you
but
go
you
away.
do such a good
Do
job.
a lot of work in between.
Yeah.
I mean, what did you do to overcome that? Because that would have been, you know, there's loads to do, loads of interest. You want to get back to people.
Mm-hmm.
There will be some people who might not have known quite as much about you as what you had shared in that episode. So how did you cope with that?
I mean, to be fair, it was only a 50-minute episode, and there's a lot of stuff that we will continue to keep sort of drip feeding through the episodes. I think that night I just had to focus on a couple of things at a time. I wanted to do the Channel 103 because as much as we can get onto these platforms, the more people we can potentially reach, which for us is amazing, because our initial goal was to help one person, and after these first two episodes, I think we've already helped more than one person. Just judging by the messages. So speaking to the local media and getting our podcast out there could potentially reach more people. So I focused on that, and then I also focused on the people that were messaging in, because you know it's amazing that people feel like they can open up just by listening to us on a podcast, which is the end goal. Yeah. So I got through.
Good.
It was a rough one. I did moan about it.
That's okay.
At work, which is fine. Yeah. But yeah, it was a struggle, but we got there, and we're still doing more. So
yeah, and I get in amongst that, you had me messaging you saying that I was pretty nervous about my episode.
Yeah, which is understandable because it was your first ever time really opening up. Yeah, and doing it to the numbers that we were getting. So
yeah, I think it was a couple of things for me, wasn't it? One was that lots of people didn't know about my experiences, and I said in my episode, I think a lot of what I experience is actually really quite normal. We'll come to some questions afterwards that talks about or ask about some of the things I've experienced. But also for me, I was a little bit worried, wasn't I, about whether people would listen to it and think, oh, well, that's not really, is anxiety a major thing? Is it something that people really need to deal with? And the response has shown that actually loads of people have resonated with that in one way or another, haven't they?
Which I tried to tell you, but
it's
always difficult trying to tell someone that's...
But what's interesting is a lot of people have asked me about how have people responded. You know, lots of people have said, how have your friends and family responded that might not have known about it? And the response has been amazing. Lots of my messages have been very supportive and sort of reaching out to say that people are there for me and they're sorry that I didn't feel like I could talk to them, and that's not a reflection of them. That's just where I was with it and still am. And again, I'll talk about that afterwards. And then alongside that, a lot of messages of people sharing their similar experience. So I think we'll go through some messages afterwards and sort of anonymise them. But loads of people reaching out wasn't there to say that they'd experienced similar things to what you or I had experienced. And that's the point, isn't it? We're trying to normalise it. We're trying to make sure people can talk about it and realise that it's okay and it is a normal thing to go through.
Hence why while we're sitting here in public, creating a podcast about mental health. So, I mean, you can't get any more open than being out in the open and talking about it. So,
yeah, I agree.
So how were you leading up to your episode? Because I had, I'd say the luxury of not knowing how it was going to go. I was looking at the numbers and thinking I'd love to get 50 listens and that would be great. But obviously my episode went out and the numbers were a lot more than that. And you could see that, so you knew that there would be a lot of people listening.
Yeah, I struggled with it. I think almost as soon as we finished recording, to be honest with you, I was like, okay, well, I've not covered, even with my notes that I took in, I hadn't covered certain things that I'd experienced or certain ways that I'd felt or certain things that I've done. And that worried me a little bit because I wasn't sure whether it was complete. I couldn't quite remember what I did say. I was worried about how it'd be received. I was worried about upsetting people. I didn't want to upset friends or family who perhaps didn't know about it or didn't know to the extent. And allowed myself to just go through a cycle of worrying about it and doubting it and wondering whether it was the right thing to do and what impact would it have. And then you sent me through the recording the night before, so I did listen to that, and that helped me a little bit. And then it came out and I worried a bit more. And then the messages started coming in. And that made a huge difference. And again, a lot of people have been interested in how it's been received and what people's responses have been. And I guess for some of them, because they're in a position of struggling with things and maybe haven't told people yet. And the response has been amazing. From colleagues to students to friends and family. Response has been great. So pretty quickly that sort of fear subsided. I'll probably have it again in a week's time when you put this out. But
yeah. But surely that makes a big difference to your day-to-day life, knowing that it's out
huge.
There also.
Yeah, and I had a really good conversation with a colleague at work who sort of acknowledged that by talking to me about it, they might be making me feel a bit anxious, but he was very much offering his support and sort of talking things through. And I said to him that actually the biggest thing for me is that people now know how I might be feeling at certain events. Social anxiety is a big one for me. So if I'm at a new environment or around new people or a really busy event, whether I've organised that or not, if I disappear for 10 minutes, there are people there who will clock onto that and think, okay, we'll give him a bit of time, a bit of space, and maybe keep an eye on him when he comes back.
Yeah.
So just that in itself will help me, I think, moving forward.
Yeah. But you also probably, as much as it's out there, I know you said in your letter to your family that you didn't want anything to change necessarily. Would that remain the same, even though people might be in a social setting with you at a party, and you might be having, do you want people to treat you differently, or just leave you to have your time out?
Leave me to have my time out. I think you asked me in the episode, would I like to be in a position where I can say I'm having a time out? And I guess I would at some point.
Yeah.
But at least if I disappear for 10, 15 minutes, I don't have to worry about where I am necessarily. It might be a little message or something to see what I'm up to.
And you've got probably more chance during those social settings if people do know that instead of you walking out the back door and not coming back, you do come back.
Yeah.
I know you said that it's not always the case, is that sometimes you would go in, come out and then go back. But, those times that you might just feel like leaving for good.
It's been weird, like, the amount of people that have come to talk to me about it, which terrifying concept that people would come and just openly have a conversation with about mental health, but also great. And within those conversations, able to say that I still struggle to talk about it in person. I know you, and we've spoken about these sorts of things before, so that's easier irrespective of the fact that there's cameras pointing at us and stuff like that.
Yeah. I mean, I had an experience where someone has come up to me only today actually, and we spoke about the podcast, and it always seems to, all the personal times that people come up like in person, they always say, I love the podcast, I am struggling, or I have struggled. I'm just like, well, you're just openly, I've just met you and you've just openly talked about.
And the hope
something
is that
you've
those
had.
people are potentially going to share that with other people as well. You know,
Yeah.
we had a message fairly quickly from someone we both know, didn't we, that spoke about the fact that he'd opened up to his partner about it, and he was starting to sort of normalise that himself, and resonated with a lot of what we'd said. So that was our one person sort of tick straight away. And maybe that leads us on to looking at some of those messages potentially.
Yeah, we can do. Yeah. Have you got the messages?
I've got a couple saved that came through to me. I've also got my notes to refer back to again as per. And I think we will consistently anonymise these, just to help others out. So I had somebody get in touch to say that they listened to it, really liked it. They passed it on to their sister who struggled with anxiety. That became worse through lockdown, then prenatal depression, very low suicidal thoughts, and that listening to this has sort of encouraged them to access or look for support. So this person's mentioned that they're going to be starting CBT soon after that person's recommendation, but that by listening to this, that might encourage that and help that, which is brilliant to hear that somebody might actually be going to receive support and has been encouraged to do so by listening to us. I've got a few questions, and I'll come back to. A good friend of ours said that there was a particular part of yours that struck a chord with him, and it was the use of the word brutal. And he said, mental health can be soul destroying. Daily journey with my mental health, some terrible moments of not wanting to be alive, some amazing moments of fulfillment. But the hardest thing is that you feel horrendous, you do everything you can to get better. You do then start to get better, and then your mood dips and you feel like you've got to start all over again.
And I think that hits home for me because, like I said in my episode, there's no medium ground for me. It's either the extreme highs or the extreme lows. So, I mean, I don't know if I'd say I'd love to get to the middle ground because I enjoy the highs and I can manage the lows. So, yeah.
But those sorts of messages have been fairly consistent, haven't they?
Yeah, and there's been I don't know how many people have messaged, but it must be 30, 40 surely of
And
really
please keep
personal
those
messages.
coming through.
Yeah,
The messages are there that are helping not only to help us or sort of encourage us to keep going with this, but also the things that we can share that will resonate with other people, and we can sort of spread.
What's the reason why we're doing it?
Yeah.
We're wanting people to open up, and it's great that they're opening up to us, but if that can get them to open up to others, then perfect.
Yeah, absolutely.
And talking about the messages, I mean, the messages that I've received have come from all areas of my life, family, friends, people that were in my life a long time ago have come out and mentioned that they've listened to the podcast and they're going through a tough time. A work colleague messaged me and they said, that they've been going through a difficult patch recently, and the podcast has really helped them, and they'll continue to listen. And if we can keep talking well and people can keep relating to it, then perfect.
I think open is the point, isn't it? Just that we're having a genuine conversation about it. I'm the same. I've had people come in from my family, good friends, people through football, people that maybe I've lost touch with. There's people who've been in touch through school. So I've had parents of students get in touch and talk about their experience of mental health, which is amazing. There's a question later on about reception from those that are around my school environment. And it's just been amazing. People have reached out who I had no idea had experienced mental health issues at all. There's another one, so somebody that got in touch and said they find it really hard to say they've got depression. Anxiety is an easier thing to say, and I'll actually talk about that afterwards with regards to myself. Seeing a psychologist, medication, various things that they do to cope with things. Hasn't stopped the highs and the lows that certainly you've spoken about, but come to terms with it and coping with it has been that much easier. So please keep the messages coming through. We will continue to anonymise them unless there is perhaps a guest or someone in particular that that wants to share something before they come on, or possibly after, but keep that coming through for us.
Yeah, and also if there's any questions that you don't want us to answer on a podcast, and you just want it's just a quick question that you would like answering, then send either me or Egg a message, or just the podcast. We both look at it, so keep them coming in for sure.
So, and the only other thing I was going to mention that I saw that came in was the beer mats. Did I share that with you before we?
Yes, yeah, and someone
on?
else has shown me the beer mats as well.
Yeah, so these 2 beer mats that came up, and perhaps you can do something clever with the visuals and put it up, but a couple of beer mats that are doing the rounds that are obviously in pubs somewhere, sort of suicide awareness and mental health awareness. So one just says, is there a mate missing around the table? Reach out to him. If your mate's acting differently, it could be a sign of mental health problem. Reach out, be yourself, do what you love together. And that resonated with me quite a lot when we spoke about my timeouts or avoiding social events. Loads of people have been in touch about that as well, by the way, saying that they've not gone to events or really struggled when they got to the door, or made excuses for it. So I'm hoping that at some point we can actually just say, actually, you know what, I'm really anxious about this. This is what I'm going to do about it, or I'm afraid I can't come. But I think that's what we're thinking about, isn't it? You know, if you go to an event and someone's not there, maybe think about why they're not there.
Yeah.
Doesn't necessarily mean that they're just sort of copping out of it, or that they've got something else on. It might be that they're just struggling a little bit.
Yeah. And I guess what's the future of this podcast? Because I've got a lot of questions from people who have really enjoyed the podcast. You know, when's next? We're going to get people that walk past and run past during this podcast, which is fine.
Go through, mate.
So yeah, what is next? Is this going to be a weekly thing? Probably not. Both me and Egg work full-time jobs. I'm also a dad, which takes up a lot of my time. So ideally we will get the episodes in when we can.
Yeah.
I don't want to commit to times, because committing to times just stresses me out. It's adding extra workload onto already a busy schedule. So
yeah, I think we'll announce stuff on social media, won't we? So Twitter, Instagram, we'll put stuff up when we are releasing episodes. Like you said, scheduling will be irregular, but I think we'll probably normally try to get a couple of episodes recorded at a time, and then it's a case of when you have time to edit and tweak things to get them out properly.
Yeah. And we have some exciting episodes coming up.
Yeah, we do. Yeah, we've got a number of people who've been in touch about potentially sharing their stories and talking through their experiences of mental health. A couple that we've got lined up who I think maybe we mention at the end.
Yeah, we can do,
episodes. If you are somebody who would like to be involved in this in some way, please do get in touch. Lots of people have. We won't be able to record with everybody straight away, but we'll try and reach as many people in many different mental health conditions as possible. From bipolar to schizophrenia to postnatal depression, all sorts. So please do get in touch, and we'll sort of work our way through and get as many episodes as possible. And I guess that is the future of it, isn't it? And we've spoken before about wanting to get some professionals on so we can talk about specific conditions, advice that they might have, and things that they recommend for people to do. And as I say, we'll have sort of different questions each time, different people coming on, different sections. I think we mentioned we're going to have maybe a little Trussie's corner for Stuart Truscott, who keeps asking us questions, which is fantastic.
And he's, to be fair, been very supportive all the way through.
Absolutely, really supportive.
And I don't know if you want to touch on it, but you said to me about your trip, which I think was really nice.
Which one?
I don't know if he knows about it. The fact that his messages were helping you get through quite a period.
Oh yeah, so 3 years ago I went to Italy, and I wasn't in a great place, to be honest with you, but went on my own to travel, to look around, and it was amazing, but wasn't in a very good place at all. And Trussie was on social media just being a bit of a pest, really, and started a little hashtag of Alan's Food Tour. And actually my engagement with him, and just sort of, I don't post a huge amount on social media, to be honest with you, so putting stuff up more regularly because of his engagement, and then having that engagement with him, and just sort of having a light-hearted end to most days, or over my coffee the following morning. And it's little things like that that you don't know necessarily what impact it's having on someone.
No.
And I was in a pretty rough place, so to have someone just engaging in a light-hearted, positive way, showing an interest, even if he was taking the mick a little bit, was a really positive thing. So cheers, Trussie, that can be your mention for this episode.
Yeah. That's good.
Although
That's
you have
good
got a
from
couple
him.
of questions that have come through later on as well. So
Should we do some questions?
yeah, I think so.
Go on. I know there's one that's pretty powerful. You can
Should we go punchy?
You can go punchy.
Okay,
Yeah.
so you were keen to mention one question in particular that's come in from someone, and that question was whether or not you'd considered suicide.
Yeah. So the reason why I was keen to answer the question is because when I was 18 and I was going through my really, really poor patch, it was definitely something that was I considered. It was, to me, the only real answer. I didn't think that I would get better, so I thought, I might just going to prolong this until the time I'm going to have to do it. And I really just had nothing to live for, really. I was 18, I'd just come back. I decided not to go to university. I decided that, becoming a PE teacher wasn't the future for me.
Cheers, mate.
So yeah, it was definitely something I considered. And at that time, I remember I didn't necessarily ask someone, but I felt like if I had asked someone who'd got through, if they had considered it, because when I was really that low, I couldn't watch the news, I couldn't see anything. And I remember seeing a post on Facebook where it was basically one of my friends in America posted about their friend that had committed suicide. And I tried to keep myself off everything, the news. I couldn't see any bad news. And seeing that, I just thought, he must have gotten to the point where I am, where it was the only choice. And I just wanted to ask the question to certain people. And then since I've opened up about my mental health, which it wasn't just the Mental Health Network, I've always been pretty open about it since I was about 20, 21, because I wouldn't wish this sort of, that illness on anybody. And people have come to me and asked me that question because I think they're in a similar position to what I was. They wanted to hear someone who's had similar thoughts, looks relatively normal and happy again, and that's what I am. I am very happy, I don't get those thoughts anymore. But yeah, it's definitely something that's at different stages of my life. I'd say when I was 18 and maybe a couple of years ago, those thoughts come into your head, but nowhere near as bad. Now I've got everything to live for. I want to see my son grow up and get married and have an amazing future, and I want to be there every single time. So yeah, I have a lot to live for.
What advice would you give to somebody who was going through similar at the age of 18? You said that maybe you didn't have much to live for then. Why? What changed back then? And
Honestly,
what would you say to someone now?
It was the CBT. It was all through CBT. I think that's the only period of time I think that it shifted. I was still struggling all the way up into it, and I think this is another question, was the initial sessions of my therapy.
Yeah.
Awful. I was in tears. I'd walk in there in tears. I would be struggling. And
why?
Because of all of these thoughts, because of am I normal? I was convinced I was one of the only people in the world that had this issue. And I seen things on Facebook where people also had the same issue and had taken that step to take their own lives. So I was just in a struggle. It was really tough. It was a really tough time. And listening to someone, I think a bit like you at the start of yours, or you're the first time you weren't fully committed. Yeah. I was sort of fully committed, but it was very hard to hear someone tell me it was going to get better. It was only when I started to implement the things he told me to do to get better, which is the back four, force myself.
I really like your back four analogy.
Yeah. Force myself to go out, force myself to sleep. And some sleep was still an issue, but going out meant I was active, which made me tired, which made me sleep. And then before I knew it, I was out of that place. So yeah, I would always go and seek help and fully commit to it.
See, my experience of seeking help are very different to that. And somebody's asked me, how were your first sessions? How does it work? The first time around, you're right. I was there because I knew there's something up. I felt that by going, I'd acknowledge that, and therefore I'll be better.
Yeah.
And allowed myself to think I got better, and didn't really engage, and sort of found myself in a worse place a little bit further down the line. This time round, my first sessions were great. I found them pretty straightforward. They were hard because I was talking about feelings, and I don't particularly like doing that. But the person that I see through Mind, I think, was sort of easing me into it, getting to know me, building that sort of trust. Sessions now are a bit harder, to be honest with you, digging down into sort of the root of where all this comes from for me. So exploring, I don't know, like my mum leaving when I was a teenager, for example, and the impact that might have had, and how I felt at the time, and how I responded, and how that mirrors how I respond sometimes now. So I'd say that, if anything, the sessions are harder now than they were at the start. Should we have a look at some of the other questions that came in for you specifically?
You can do, yep.
So I think, Trussie's asked about, since the first, I don't know why Trussie's the only person I name when I do the questions. He asked about response from the first episode, people sharing their journey. We've spoken about that.
We have, yeah.
Somebody's asked if you're still involved in coaching football, because obviously you went away to coach.
Yeah, so no, is the short answer. It will be something that I will do when my legs decide to give way. I want to play football as long as possible. We've got a friend at football who's playing at a very old age compared to the rest of us.
Still one of the best players in the team.
Yeah, and I'd love to get to there, but when that goes, I still feel like I need to be part of that football community. I love Rozelle. I love being part of the club, and the club isn't just kicking a football around the pitch. There's so much more. So yeah, I'd love to do it, and I really enjoyed it in California as well. It was a shame it ended in the way it did, but it's not left a sour taste. I'll pick it back up when I can't play.
Yeah, I think it's it. Especially for you at the club, you've been so involved in the club for so long. Coming away from that would leave a big gap in time as well, wouldn't it? And when being busy is an important part of
I love it.
your strategy. And the other one that I wanted to ask you was what have you learned about yourself since recording and going through all of this? Because you are open about it. You've explored your mental health. You're very knowledgeable about your own experiences, and I think you're very articulate in being able to talk about that. Is there anything that you've learned in the last few weeks as a result of recording and actually listening back and going through that process?
There's one thing that always sticks into my head because I was 18. It's not so raw for me. So when I'm talking about it and I can listen back to it, I can sense that I am definitely at the end of that journey. It's not raw emotion. Whereas I think, I listened to yours, and I said to you when we were chatting about before releasing it, that you could tell you were still struggling to talk and open up. So yeah, sometimes it's quite difficult to take myself back 12 years ago and remember all of the little things that happened that made things 10 times worse or 10 times better. And I guess that would lead into one of the questions that I think came in for you, which is that you mentioned depression in your episode, but you didn't quite touch on it, and why.
Yeah, I think there's a couple of reasons for that. The first is, as you said, I'm not brilliant at talking about it.
I thought you were good at talking about it. It's just
okay. Well,
you could
I'm
still
not
tell
great
it was
at
like
talking
not
about,
quite.
Yeah. I maybe haven't processed the depression side of things enough. There's still periods where I go through feeling pretty low. I've not really explored how best to deal with that specifically. It's not something I've particularly looked into in counselling as yet. So we've spoken a lot about anxiety because that affects me more regularly, and that's something that I think has a bigger impact on day-to-day living. I think the other side of it for me is that I'm very conscious of the fact that I've not had particularly open conversations with people that are close to me. So I don't want maybe them to hear certain things for the first time through a podcast that lots of other people are hearing about. I'm also very conscious of upsetting or hurting them. I've spoken to my counsellor about that, and she has quite rightly said that by not sharing things, perhaps they would worry more because it's uncertain and they're not going to be sure about how I am and what's going on. But
Yeah.
I think for me, that's something that maybe we'll explore at a later stage and maybe come into. I guess I'm in a more informed place with regards to dealing with anxiety than I am with the depression side of things.
Yeah. And again, when I say it was 12 years ago, I struggled to take myself back. I mean, I've left depression behind. I live with anxiety every day. I can talk about anxiety because it was only yesterday I had anxiety, so it's easier.
Yeah.
Um,
And I guess, another question that came through to me was whether I'd do anything differently. And I think for me, 100% it would be actually engaging properly in the sport the first time round.
yeah,
If I was 5-6 years into counselling or some form of therapy, or even just 5 years into using strategies to overcome those things, I think I'd be in a much better place now. So I think that's something I would change. That same person actually asked about students at school and whether it puts me in a better position to support them. And I think it does and it doesn't. It helps me to empathise a little bit more with students who are experiencing certain things. But as we keep saying, and I will probably say every time, we're not experts. I'm not in a position to be able to counsel or provide loads of support for students. I can signpost to relevant people.
yeah,
So I think it helps me to empathise a little bit, and I'm hoping that by being open about this, it will help students to feel they can at least open up and talk to me about it.
yeah.
But I don't think I'm yet in a position to be informed enough to have an impact upon changing their mental health, other than signposting them to people.
Okay, I'm just looking through the other questions that we had. We've got one that says, "What did the letter say?" And I assume that's the letter you sent to your family.
Yeah, I saw that come through. So that's a hard one. So there were different sections to it. I'm not going to read it word for word because that is obviously quite a private thing between myself and my family. Initially, it said you basically stop reading if you can't guarantee that you're not going to change anything. And I also said in that I don't want other people to know. Then I spoke about the fact that I had realised something wasn't quite right. I started to address that, started to look into that, and realised that I needed some help. I explained to them that I'd been to see people and that had then resulted in a label of anxiety and depression. I said, like some of the guys that have messaged in actually, that I didn't particularly like the labelling of depression. I think it was the right diagnosis, but I struggled with the concept of it. I felt like it had been diagnosed too quickly and wasn't maybe willing to admit it. I think the stigma side of things.
Yeah.
Then I explained some of the things that trigger it, the impact that has, sort of what I experience on a day-to-day basis, the fact that there's highs and lows that come with it, and then sort of reiterated the fact that I didn't want anything to change and we crack on.
Yeah.
And they held true to that. We've not really had conversation about it. Been a few messages flying about since.
Yeah. I've seen them come in. Your
Especially
dad's been
since
very
the
supportive.
episode in the last week. Yeah, Dad's been great. Brother and sister have been great. Extended family have been great.
Does that make you feel so much better?
Yeah, relieved as much as anything else.
Yeah.
And I said when I referred back to that first meal where I felt really small and wanted to get out and didn't want to talk to anyone, it was all my family there, and they've always been supportive.
Yeah.
I didn't doubt that they would be, but I'm just relieved that I guess that sort of line has been crossed, that there's an awareness there. I'm sure there will be some challenging conversations ahead where we'll get upset and we'll talk things through, but that'll be part of the journey, I guess.
That's good. It's good. It's
Yeah.
a good part of the journey.
Yeah, I
It
think
gets
so.
it all open. Any more for me? Any
Um,
more for any more?
I had a question this was from my partner. We've just got flat pack furniture.
Oh God, yeah.
Um,
This is a funny one.
well,
Actually, I
she's
can
just
tie-
asked, what are your thoughts on flat pack furniture? Because
Okay,
for
so she was hoping.
her and myself and her friend that came to help, there were some tantrums and almost very damaging for my mental health, to be honest with you.
Okay.
I didn't realise that you love it.
Yes, I love flat pack furniture.
Oh,
It was actually used to be a little side hustle that me and my dad used to do, which was to build other people's flat pack furniture
Okay.
that they ordered online.
Well, you're signed up for the next one then.
Yeah, honestly I don't mind it, and most of them are very similar the way they're built with the locking system. So, in a way, I find it actually very therapeutic and helps me escape. I can just fully focus on that bit of furniture, and then it's great to see it when it's all fully built. It looks amazing.
I'm not okay with that. I struggle with it. Yeah, I think that was it for questions, though, wasn't it? We had quite a lot coming in. As I say, I think, as we outlined in the first episode, and we've not sort of gone through with this yet because of the structure of the first few.
Yeah,
I think every time we'll have a little reflection
we'll look at a few questions that have come in specifically for us. We'll then talk to the guests that are in.
Yeah.
And then from there, go on to sort of questions that we might have for them. So it's going to be my job, I guess, to think of a question for our next guest, because we said we would ask each guest to think of a question for the next
you can
person.
go for the...
So I'll have a think in advance for our guest. I don't know if you wanted to talk about who those guests were.
Yeah. We did get permission before to make sure that we could. So we've got Darcy Kelly lined up, and we've got Kayla as well. Darcy was one of the other 5 islanders that were part of the mental health campaign that we ran a year ago. Her story is, it's a deep one, but definitely one that people should, and if they can, listen to it, because I even though it was a different journey to me, it happened at a different time for her, it's very powerful. And I think, I've mentioned it to my sisters. I've got 2 little sisters, and they're looking forward to listening to it, because it's a similar age to what they are now. And we've got...
I'm right in thinking that she's quite open about mental health, isn't she? We've had a few people message in and actually suggest that we get in touch with Darcy.
Yeah. I mean, she's good at this, because that's her job. So I'm looking forward to that one. Yeah, it'll be great to have her on.
It'll be nice for us to be out of the spotlight as well, I guess, asking questions rather than...
And then we've got Kayla as well, who was actually one of my old clients when I was freelancing as a graphic designer. And then since those days, I've just followed her online presence, which she's active on all sorts of TikTok and Instagram and YouTube. And I remember tuning into one of her YouTube channels, one of her YouTube videos, and she spoke openly about her eating disorders. So we've had a lot of questions, and a lot of people asking for someone to talk about eating disorders. So also we've got her coming on, which would be great. So yeah, there'll be 2 great episodes, and then in the future after that, we've got my brother. Yeah. Which will...
Do you want to mention what your brother's going to be talking about?
Yep. It's an interesting one, because my brother's very similar to your partner in a way that he doesn't quite understand mental health, because he's not had it, and he openly admits that. He says it. And we've just come back from the UK, and we were sitting on the plane, and I just had a light bulb moment. I was thinking, you do have a mental health condition, and that is a fear of flying. He's got aerophobia, I think it's called. And it's not, I think he said he's spent thousands of pounds on trying to fix this fear of flying. And it's not just your normal every time. It really gets to him, a week before a flight and all the rest of it. So if we can get him on to talk about it, I think it's 2 in 5 people suffer from it. So that will be a great one.
Because when you mentioned that struck a chord with me, because my partner's scared of flying. And that's something that I've actually been able to relate with her a little bit on, because what she goes through and what she experiences is what I can experience on a day-to-day sometimes without any sort of rational reason. And that's really helped her to sort of understand it a little bit. So that'll be very interesting to hear your brother talk about that.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see what he's like on a podcast.
So we'll get those scheduled. As you said at the start, the scheduling for this will be fairly irregular, but we'll keep people posted on social media,
always.
With the intention of releasing stuff every few weeks if we can. But we'll just sort of see what's going on. Please keep questions coming in the meantime. Keep talking to us.
Yep.
Please keep sharing stories with us, because the messages of thanks, the messages of support, the sharing of stories has made the last couple of weeks a lot easier. It's not been an easy couple of weeks for me personally. I found parts of that quite challenging, but the response of people, actually, the ease with which people have approached it has been really reassuring.
Mm-hmm.
People say, how's the podcast going? I heard about it. It sounds great. Doesn't need to be a big thing. Doesn't need to be a sort of a massive conversation or a sit down or, I think people see counselling as being like you're lying down on the
No, it's
the big chair
it's
and
definitely
being
not that.
dug into a little bit.
No.
People that have been talking about it have just been so chilled out about it, and that's been really reassuring. So
for those that are listening, please keep that up.
It also helps
we
when
really
you're
appreciate it.
churning out all the edits and all the work and you get these messages. It just makes everything worth it.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think that's a good closer.
Yeah, absolutely. So thank you very much.
Thank you, and yeah, we'll look forward to the next episode.
See you soon.
Ciao.